You're listening to Classic Dialogues, Land Power in the Indo-Pacific, a China Land Power Studies Center production. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the authors and are not necessarily those of the Department of the Army, the U.S. Army War College, or any other agency of the U.S. government. I have Colonel Rich Butler and Dr. Brendan Mulvaney in the studio with me today to talk about the China Aerospace Studies Institute. Butler's the director of the China Land Power Studies Center and the Strategic Studies Institute at the U.S. Army War College. Mulvaney is the director of the Department of the Air Force's China Aerospace Studies Institute. He's a Marine Cobra pilot with more than 2,000 flight hours. He was an Olmsted Scholar at Fudan University in Shanghai, China, where he earned his PhD in International Relations. Thank you for joining me.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Tell us a little bit about your organization, please. What's your mission? How do you contribute to the U.S. Department of Defense's China Community of Interest?
Yeah, so at CASI, we take a very broad view of aerospace. We like to say our unofficial tagline is we study everything that flies. Obviously, the PLA Air Force is the biggest chunk of that, but we also do naval aviation. We do Army aviation. For the Chinese, they're organized differently. So we do rockets and missiles, which for them is a different force. We do space and satellites, which for them is a separate service. And then because China writ large is just different than the United States, we take a bigger picture because we look at state-owned enterprises, which we don't have in Western democratic countries typically, and how they interact with the party and the state to continue to improve the Chinese aerospace capabilities, like I said, writ large, from soup to nuts.
I would love to hear more about your researchers. Who are they, and what are their areas of expertise and research portfolios?
Everybody at CASI speaks and reads Chinese. It's the minimum bar to entry. And we've got everywhere from researchers all the way up to senior level. My deputy is a lieutenant colonel. We've got a mix of enlisted, officer, and civilian academics. They've been doing China, obviously, for long enough to learn Mandarin. And then some really good PLA experts who have done this for multiple years. And I tell people that even if we can't do it in-house, we've got a gal or we've got a guy in our network that could get you whatever answers you need because the researchers that we're able to bring to CASI are just so phenomenal.
I can dovetail into that. When I was the G5 at U.S. Army Pacific, we didn't have the subject matter expertise on the Army team to be able to do some of the things we needed to study in terms of China ground forces and the related domains and the depth that CASI had. My planners were actually reaching out and getting analytics from them to help us understand the environment, understand what the PLA Army and the other services of the Chinese Communist Party were capable of doing. So we were prepared both from a planning standpoint for contingency, but also understanding where we could compete with them every day.
What are your major production lines? Can you give us maybe some examples of what you've recently published or any China-focused conferences you may have hosted or that you regularly host?
Sure. So we have a charter for the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and he lined out 4 things that we need to do in priority order. And the first is research. So we do long-form research that could take anywhere from 6, 9, 12 months or even more, depending on how detailed the topic is. We do also short-form articles and things that we put up on our website or publish through other venues. And so there's quite a spread on those as well. The second one is warfighter engagement, warfighter support. That includes things like going out to the combatant commands, going out to the component commands, talking to them, getting them spun up, helping on war games, thinking through planners and policies and all that kind of stuff. So that's our number 2. Number 3 is education, which is very important. We fall under Air University. We are active throughout Air University, that Air War College, Command and Staff, SAS, things like that. But we also engage at National Defense University, where we also have an office. And so we're kind of unique in that aspect that we have 2 offices, one at Maxwell and one at NDU. Through that, we have developed a series of video lectures called Competition with China. And then the Chief of Staff asked us to come up with a thing he called the Toolkit for Commanders for China, where that's some pre-made briefs that an O3 or an E5 can go and give on a training day based on some of the slides and the background notes that we provide for them. Our number 4 is outreach, and we deal with allies and partners all the time. That's one of the most rewarding parts about this job. What we've done recently, Ms. Kristen Burke is our space gal. She published the best, most in-depth part of Chinese counterspace command and control. So that's the major one. In the past, we've done one on military-civil fusion. We did a PLA rocket force organization, which really made a very big impact, and I'll leave it at that for now. And then every other year, we do a China conference. Ours will be next May 14th at National Defense University. We hold ours in even years, and CMSI, the China Maritime Studies Institute, does theirs in odd years, so we alternate. That's just kind of what we do. And we do online webinars and things like that on an as-needed basis, too.
What can we look forward to coming out of CASI? Do you have any future research efforts or other projects or programs our listeners need to be aware of?
the counter space that Ms. Burke put out. We have a couple more projects focused on PLA and China space more generally. And so those will be out here over the next couple months. We're hoping to use the Rocket Force model to develop a publication on the Air Force. It's obviously a much bigger, much more detailed organization to kind of do that. But that's one of those longer term projects we have. We have some things on UAVs. We got Josh Boffman, who does artificial intelligence and intelligentization of the PLA. So those are some of the things we've got going on. The great part is that it's all open source. So we put it up on our website. We put it out through X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as on LinkedIn and Facebook and anywhere else that people can follow us on social media, just to get the most information to the most people so they can make the best decisions with it.
I love that. Do you want to share your website?
Well, if you Google CASI and Air University, it's the first thing that pops up for LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. Just Google CASI research. We should show up on all those things. But of course, there's links on the website too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This was a real treat to talk with you today.
Thanks for having me.
For more War College podcasts, check out Conversations on Strategy, SSI Live, and A Better Peace.